All right, lesson 3 of unit 4 for pre-algebra. We're going to be talking about solving equations with adding and subtracting. We're going to be doing one-step equations. We're actually going to split one-step equations into 2 lessons, this one, and then the next one will be multiplying and dividing, and then we'll do 2 steps, and then we'll be done with this unit. Sound good? I think so. Sounds pretty great. Let's dive in. So we're going to dive in, but we're going to start by writing kind of the steps to solving any equation, like literally any equation. These 3.5 steps will apply to every equation from now till like pre-algebra and calculus and whatever else. These pretty much always are the steps, and we do these steps and then we repeat them over and over again until we get the answer that we're looking for, which is usually getting the variable by itself. That's usually our goal. So our steps are this. Our step for solving equations are, our first is what I call the half step. Okay? And that is the cleanup step. Okay? That's doing things like combining like terms or the distributive property. Terms or distributive property. And things of that sort, right? That's what we're looking for on those, on that step. Now, on this lesson and the next lesson, and actually the next lesson, this unit entirely, at this point in the in your math journey, we're not going to do the cleanup step at all. We're not going to see this at all. We're going to jump straight into the other steps because we're not going to have anything to clean up. Okay, so the first thing we do is we ask a question. We want to look at what's attached. Oops. What's attached to the variables? And we're talking about numbers here. We're talking about numbers. And then we want to ask a second question. And that is, how is it attached? How is it attached? And so we're talking about addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, potentially something else, but pretty much those are our main options. Right? Sometimes, and really by main options, those are pretty much our only options 98.5% of the time or more, right? And then once we've determined those two things, then the third thing we do is we do the opposite to get rid of it. Do the opposite to remove it. And by opposite, what we really mean is inverse. Do the opposite to remove it. And we stop when the variable's by itself. When variable, I'm going to write variable alone. Oops. When the variable gets all by its lonesome. Okay, so those are the steps, and those are always going to work. When we add some more things and do more stuff, it's still going to be the same step. When we get more and more complicated equations, we still do these steps over and over again until we get to the point where the variable's by itself and we're all cleaned up on the other side. Right? So let's dive in with some examples. I think we're going to end up doing 3 examples, and then we're going to be finished. So examples. Example number 1. Let's do x minus 7 equals -4. Okay, so remember our goal is to get the variable by itself, right? So there's nothing to clean up. There's not going to be anything to clean up this whole unit, right? So we're going to ask our two questions. So what is attached to the variable? So the 7 is attached to the variable. How is it attached? It's attached through subtraction. What's the opposite of subtracting? It's adding. So we're going to add 7. If we add 7 to the left side of the equals, then we've got to also add it to the right side of the equals, right? So we're going to add 7 over here as well, right? So -7 plus 7 cancels, because that's what the inverse does, is it makes the number go away. So that's our goal here, is to make the number go away. So -7 plus 7 cancels out, right? And so all we're left with, what we haven't touched, right, is x over on the left side. We're going to bring down our equals, and we're going to keep it all nice and lined up. Keep it all nice and neat and organized and orderly. It helps our life a lot. So -4 plus 7, the signs are different, so we're going to add and keep the sign of the bigger one. Different, so we're going to subtract and keep the sign of the bigger one. So -4 plus 7 is +3, right? Let's do a second one. Example number 2. Let's see, I think we're switching my, oh, nope, I was wrong. Okay, so let's do -13.9 equals n minus 9.7. So our goal here, just like before, is to get that variable all by itself, right? Excuse me. And so in order to do that, we're going to look at what's attached, how is it attached, and do the opposite to get rid of it, right? So what's attached to the end? 9.7 is, how is it attached? It's attached through subtraction. So how are we going to get rid of it? We're going to do the opposite. The opposite of subtracting is adding. We're going to add 9.7 to this side. If we do it to this side, we've got to do it to the other side of the equals over here. We're talking about sides. We're talking about each side of the equals. If you have any amount of trouble remembering where you're trying to add and subtract and all of those things, you may want to do a dashed line through your equals like this. It can kind of help you remember on what's on what side, right? So over here, this cancels out, leaving us with just an n. We're going to line up our equals. Signs are different, so we're going to subtract and keep the sign of the bigger one. So 13.9 minus 9.7 is 4.2, but it's -4.2 because 13.9 is bigger and it's negative. Now, the last thing, this isn't really a step, but we're going to go ahead and start getting in the habit of putting our answer with the variable on the left-hand side. And so the last thing we're going to do is we're going to switch these over. It doesn't technically matter, but it's going to make our life easier whenever we move on to things like inequalities with, like less than, greater than, and all that stuff. And so if we get in that habit now, it's just going to make our life easier. And so we're just going to get in the habit of writing that way. It's not really, like I say, it's not really necessarily necessary, and it's also not really a step, right? But we're going to just practice that. We're going to do one more example, and then we are going to be done with this video. But we are not going to do that. Well, yeah, we're not going to do that example. We're going to do a differenter one because I want to illustrate something else. Keep letting y'all see what's behind the curtain and disagreeing with what I'm working on. So let's do this one. -15 plus a equals 5. Okay, so we don't have any cleanup. We're going to look at what's attached, how's it attached, and do the opposite to get rid of it. So what is attached? That's 15. Now, Here's a tricky thing, and this is why I wanted to do this one in particular. This 15 is attached through subtraction, not addition, because of this minus right here. All right? Because adding a negative is the same as subtracting. And what we want to remember is when you're trying to figure out which operation to do, adding or subtracting, you want to do the one that's going to make it go away. Because if I did negative 15 minus 15, then it would be negative 30, which would not be going away. Negative 15 plus 15 is 0, right? And so that's really the easiest way to make sure you do the right operation, whether it's addition or subtraction. It's whichever one is going to make that number go away, because we're trying to get A all by itself. So those cancel, leaving us with just an A equals, and then 5 plus 15, signs the same, add and keep the sign, so it's positive 20. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. That's it. That is how we solve equations by adding and subtracting. In our next lesson, we'll talk about same thing, but multiplying and dividing. If you're one of my students, I'll see you in class. Don't forget to do your homework and all the things. If you're not one of my students right now, thank you for joining us. If you're living in the Lubbock, Texas area, you ought to check out Ember Learning Labs, and you could become one of my students. That would be really great. If you're just joining us in the world at large, then thanks for being here. We are providing this entire pre-algebra course, the lecture part anyway, for free here on YouTube. And in order to do that, what would really help us out is if you just hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything. It's no big deal. And hit the like on this video. Make sure and comment and let us know what we can help you out with in your math, science, and general homeschool journey. Thanks, you guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye.